of where you're sitting when you are at the stop bar, at least in my car.
Correct.
And so really from my car, I can actually see behind that telephone pole and see the cars coming. With the sign there, there's room. For me, it's blocking a little bit, but it's within the setback requirements, I understand, but you do lose some vision, and you have to remember on Broadway the traffic's at 40, not 30 like Monona Drive, so it's a little different than the standards we set on Monona Drive. So I'm just curious if you feel it would inhibit it at all, or its visibility if you moved it back just a little more. I'm just curious your opinion. I'm not saying it has to, but
No,
for SUV that sits up taller,
Yep.
I see over that crest of the hill, and I can see the traffic coming. It gives me some good
Yeah.
view of what's coming there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword because of that hill when you're traveling westbound, I guess it would be, or eastbound on Broadway. We wanted to try to get as much visibility as that traffic on the south side heading east as possible. So I mean, I'm still thinking that it's going to be tough to see. We do have a sign in the median that says boat landing next right, you know, so the majority of people I think will know where it is. But I'm comfortable with it, but I certainly, you know, we have the ability to move it back as well. Towards the east of that is we get into the limits of our archaeological boundary with Native America. To the west, I'm sorry. Yep, to the west.
I'm not dead set on that. It's just an observation when I was there. It is a little easier to see that traffic coming. I think because of the sign I want to talk about under commissioner things, to be able to get out of there, you got to pull way ahead right now because you cannot see the sidewalk to your right. You can't see it at all. So to actually be able to pull ahead, you have to be way ahead of that stop bar to be able to see anything and into the sidewalk. So I think that's a bigger issue for traffic right now. It's just, I think if you drive a sports car, that wouldn't matter a bit because you wouldn't see over that hill. For me, I can see over it right now and it'll block it a little bit. I know what Jake's saying though. When I was coming eastbound, it comes up on you in a hurry.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure you see it right away.
Yeah. Anything else, Mr. Umberg?
No, I think it's a great looking sign. I love our city signs and the branding of our city with them. I think they're great, and I like the plantings you're proposing on putting there. We didn't have a plan to show us where, but you haven't let us down on any other sign. So I think we have a history there.
They'll be in there.
Any other comments from commissioners? Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
We'll move on to 6B, consideration of action on special exemption request signage requirements at Pier 37, Building C, 6524 Monona Drive for Air Force tenant signage, represented by Ryan Coffey of Lockheed Sign Company. Good evening. Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie.
Am I required to stand over there?
Yes.
Yeah, it's on TV,
Yeah,
so
they're
then they can hear
being
you.
recorded for the million of people.
Yeah, all three viewers.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in the notes that I have here, we are proposing to establish two raceway signs, pretty much replacing what was existing for the Cherry Berry on site. And the master sign program on file stipulates red faces, but the Air Force has submitted documentation, and I believe we've passed it along to you for the their federal requirements to have their signs be blue. So we are asking for that approval.
Thank you. If you want to, Stephanie, if you'd like to stay there for a second, we'll open it up to Sonia first.
So the Pier 37 development has signage plans for all the buildings, and for Building C, where this tenant space is located, as Stephanie mentioned, the face requirement is red color. All the other requirements are met, which is stated in the findings of fact that I recommended. And for the Plan Commission to approve a special exception, the applicant has to submit a written request for that and show how they meet the factors listed in the code. So, that's all I have.
Commission members, comments? Dale?
I look at Pier 37 as a single development, and Woodcraft sign is green, Staples is white, Buffalo Wild Wings is black, Starbucks is white, Taco Bell is blue, Verizon is white. I have no problem with it whatsoever. I think that as long as all the signs are channel letters, I think the very colors enhances the project rather than detracts by having them all red. So I think it's great,
Thank you.
Air Force or otherwise.
Thank you. Other comments? Holmquist?
So I have a concern regarding, we just had a recent applicant here where a building had a sign package indicating red or white, and they had a tenant that also presented a branding issue for national branding where they were switching to a blue, and we held that the use of vinyl letters and other things in the window is wide open, but the signage on the building was to stick with the plan. I'm looking at the letter that was submitted with it, and the letter I have, it looks like it is consistent with talking about this is our branding change and logo. And, somewhere on here it was referencing that this was a requirement by the Air Force Division, and so I'm not seeing the requirement piece of it. I'm seeing a letter that kind of references this is kind of our shift. So when I look at the Starbucks, my guess is they would have preferred green, and they compromised with white.
But if they're supposed to be red, how did they compromise with white?
Building A allows red and white.
Red and white in that building. And so when we look at some of the other places, they were, from my understanding, it's because they are anchor tenants such as BW3, and that's why there was an exception there. But I'd like to hear from others that have been here longer. I'm just concerned with, we just recently had something very similar, and how we dealt with that, the consistency.
Thank you. Other commission members? Mr. Humbert?
Brian's right on, and we all want to support the armed forces and give you whatever you want, but it will certainly set a precedent that we might as well just blow up our colors on our signage code there, because Starbucks fought pretty hard for green and they went to the white. We didn't allow it, and that's their branding as much as anybody else's branding. We did allow it on the bigger buildings for the anchors. On the two smaller buildings, we've held pretty tough on buildings B and C. I'm not sure that's the right thing to do, but it's what the signage code is right now, and I think it's a decision the commission has to make. If we truly think it adds more interest and better for the building, maybe we're wrong in having all red or red and white letters, but it's what we did for those buildings, is what we've been trying to enforce, and I really dislike every time we have to sit here and tell somebody you can't have your own color, or it's your brand. You've identified it. Starbucks has identified it. This is who we are, and I like the green Starbucks. I think it adds character to the building, but we stuck tight to our signage plan on that one. I don't have the answer, but it's an excellent question that Brian raised, because we spent a lot of time coming up with all those signage plans, whether they're right or wrong. I'm not saying it's the thing to do, Dale. It's what we have. I know Sharon sitting there smiling, and Griff, I mean, you've sat through it all.
Who owns this building?
Legacy Company, I believe,
Oh, no.
still owns it.
Do they own it, or did they sell it off? I thought they sold everything off.
They
There's-
sell it off. Can the
Yeah.
new owner request a new signage plan?
Well, existing owner or new owner can request a new signage plan. Anyone can. The point is, if we do this, I mean, we really just have to open it up. But if Starbucks wants to go with green, we need to let them go with green then. I mean, we have to decide, do we want all red? Do we want that uniformity? Or, as Dale said, does it add character to the building and let them have their own sign?
I'm confused, so if there was a sign plan for Pier 37, it's different per building?
Yes. Yeah, like Taco Bell's a freestanding building, they get their colors they want. Red Robin's a freestanding building, they get the colors they want. Cops is a freestanding building, they get to pick the colors they want. The building A, which you identified, was supposed to be one color, but then we let the two end anchors because of Buffalo Wild Wings and what's the other end?
Staples.
No,
Woodcraft.
Woodcrafters, we allowed them end cap identification. Right or wrong, we did it on that bigger building because it's a big building and their large anchors was important to the center. And we had all kinds of reasons why in the explanation for the findings of fact why we did that. A small space like this really wouldn't hit those exceptions. But I'm not saying this isn't appropriate for that space. We need some consistency in whatever we do. We just have to decide what it is.
And I think, you're bringing up a different property, is that correct?
Yep, but it was a very similar
No, this property.
No,
Starbucks.
Brian's example was down the street.
for Allstate.
Allstate came in here and they wanted blue, but it was red was what was approved, and we didn't allow.
And Starbucks, though, was turned down on this property on building B.
Which is, it's worth noting, as the commission establishes those ground rules, I would respectfully question allowing white to begin with. So Starbucks has got white letters on a off-white building, which I think is pretty strange, and there's a couple of them that have that. Anyways, I certainly wasn't around at the beginning of this. I look at that property and see Buffalo Wild Wings paint the facade of the building fluorescent yellow and put black letters on it, and we're worried about the Air Force putting blue letters up. I don't get it. I mean, I know where it came from, but I think maybe the inconsistencies have been established. And again, I think it enhances the property myself, rather than everything being red.
Griff?
Well, I think, there is some purpose in trying to establish some general sign parameters, but we've always recognized that you can't just blindly apply them. And we have permitted exceptions for all kinds of situations where there has been a particular brand. I personally think that this is a different situation. We're talking with another branch of government, that there's a certain comity between governments. I'm not so sure that even that the city of Monona has the power to compel the Air Force to change its lettering. But in any event, I see no problem with the proposed two letters in this case. And I think we've already created a number of exceptions in the area.
Sure.
Well, I don't see any problem with what's being proposed, but I totally agree with what's been said here as far as the fact that we had something proposed to us as this development went up, and I don't even think originally we included white. I think it was just one color, but regardless, that's water over the dam at this point. But we have continually let people go through and change different aspects of it, and we do need to either just decide that is done for this particular property and we're allowing things or whatever, because every time we do it, we run into this same situation that who do we allow and who do we not, and what do we do in fairness to all participants, not only in this development, but throughout the rest of the city. So it's, it's time that we say something emphatically for this or move on, I guess.
Ron?
What's proposed doesn't bother me, and I like it, in fact. But I do understand it's difficult. I wasn't here either during the development of that signage code. But it seems like there's been other exceptions made, regardless whether it's a bookend building or not. I think, or a larger business, it's a brand, but it does open the door to any other brand. And whether it's the Air Force or a local company, I think they should then be able to have the ability to brand themselves however they deem fit, as long as they fall within the parameters of sizing and
If there's new ownership of this building, would they have the right to come in and request a change to the signage plan?
Of course.
Is that a route that should be pursued so that we're not,
That's probably a good idea.
being judge and jury?
Something
on-
like that should occur, because it's really two different issues. Their sign that they're asking for tonight, to me, is one issue. The rest of the, what we do with the rest of the development and so forth, to me, is a little bit of a separate case. That's something that I don't know that we should hold this applicant up for.
Further discussion, or is there a motion?
I move approval of the sign.
I would
With
say,
the findings of fact that are recommended by staff. Particularly the third finding that the applicant has provided federal sign specification requirements.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Brian?
Sonia, are you able to point to that finding of fact number 3? Is it different than the letter?
Yeah, it's written in the staff report. You have your hand right on it right there, number 3.
But is the sign specification requirement different than what was included in the packet?
The recommendation is to approve what was proposed in the packet.
I think what Brian's getting at is it references the Department of Defense Real Estate Division, but it's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that wrote the letter, correct?
Well, this is a letter that is referencing branding. Item 3 underneath finding the fact is talking about federal sign specification requirements.
Got it.
I mean, one to me is like,
Well, but I don't know that isn't this portion here.
Well,
To
I
me,
agree
the
with Brian.
specifications are in here.
That's misleading, because that's their requirements to their vendors.
yeah.
I don't believe they can come and just supersede our sign ordinance. I suspect they can't. So I agree that finding the fact should be written a little bit softer. I think they have requirements to their vendors, like Ryan Signs or whomever might be doing it, but their branding is no different than Starbucks branding or Allstate's branding or anybody else's branding is his point, and I think that's legitimate.
So is there the motion was based upon languages recommended by staff. Are we still sticking with that, or is there a modification to that?
I mean, to me, that's the issue, is if we're pointing to number 3 as the reason why we're saying that they are meeting the special exception, we need to make sure that that is accurate. I don't think number 3 is completely accurate. So I would have a tough time supporting the exception. I think we open up a bigger concern unless we have additional information.
I'm not following. So you're concerned that we're approving it because the Air Force requires it?
That's what
Yeah.
number 3 leads me to believe, and I don't think that's
Yeah.
accurate.
No, it isn't accurate at all. And Mr. Hamburg, you're correct. They can't, nobody can come in and change our ordinance, right? I mean, and I'm certainly not recommending approval for that reason. Simply that I just think it's appropriate at the development. So maybe just 3 needs to be eliminated.
Or just change it, it's a strong branding for a national presence or something like that. Something like that would relate to what the letter actually says.
So how do we make that change?
I don't read it that way. I mean, what I see here are the specifications for how they like to see the signs built and so forth. So that to me is all it's saying. So I'm not sure if we're reading something into it, maybe.
Are you able,
What if we change 3 to just say the applicant has provided a letter from the Department of Defense Real Estate Division stating reasons for the request and how the sign meets the evaluation factors. We'll leave the question of whether or not it is a specification requirement for future.
Well, it's not the Department of Defense, it's the Army Corps of Engineers Real Estate Division, correct?
The Department of the Army.
No.
Corps of
Well, whatever it is, right? Do you want to say that again, Griff? As
The applicant has to say, as provided a letter from the Department of the Army Corps of Engineers stating reasons for the request and how the sign meets the evaluation factors. Just take out the first
We're
part.
striking, yeah, the first part.
People can read the letter however they want.
Further discussion? Ready for a vote?
Sounds good.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
You said pink, right?
Whatever color you want.
Red.
I'll say that.
6C, consideration of action on request by Mary Beth Growney Celine Ryan Signs, Inc. for approval of a landscape ground sign permit for the Lake Edge apartment development at 4033 Monona Drive. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you all. Could I go back to the last item for a moment? Just as a point of information. We wrote those sign standards for Pier 37, and a lot has changed since those were written. And several of you were on this commission at the same time, so I'm only slightly aging myself. But red was pretty much the color of choice back when that development happened, because red neon, it was the best illuminating color. And strip shopping centers, if you can visualize, our entire metropolitan area had a tremendous number of red signs. And with the invention and use of LED, lots and lots of commercial developments have modified, like you're considering for Pier 37, to any color. So it was really more out of necessity that we went with red, because any single color could have been used, but none of them illuminated as well as red. So just a little bit of history.
Okay.
My sign here is externally illuminated, so non-issue. You all have in front of you, I believe in your packets, a modest monument sign. Thanks so much for doing that, Chris. That's really nice. That will be incorporating the materials from the building, not only the materials, but the exact colors of the building, and then to the surface of the brownish color, we will be adding flat cut letters with a satin aluminum finish. And it's a single-sided sign. It's actually set back away from the street into a parking lot island.
Thank you. Do you want to hang there in case we're Sonia?
The sign meets the 5-foot height requirement. It exceeds the 15-foot setback from the street curb. The landscaping plan was submitted. Lighting is ground mounted, and the fixtures were included in the packet. And staff recommendation is for approval with landscaping planted at the same time to make sure that that gets done.
Commission members, comments? No issues? Is there a motion?
It looks good. Obviously not going after a tremendous amount of visibility.
Correct. The placement wasn't my recommendation.
Yeah. So the owners obviously are aware of its effectiveness as a sign.
I think so. I mean, I really just think it's a "you are here, you have arrived" kind of
Yes.
sign versus an advertising.
It looks good.
Is there a motion?
Move approval of the sign with the condition recommended by staff.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
Nice to see you.
Consideration of action on request by Jeng's Asian Kitchen, Jamie Chong, for approval of wall sign permits for 6001 Monona Drive. Good evening.
So our rep Alvin, for some reason he was not able to make it tonight, so we'll do our best
Okay.
explaining what he has given us. So let's go. I believe you guys already have packets. correct?
Yes.
Okay. Double check. Okay, so basically we're here for our wall signage approval. So what we planned for was to use Jing's as a white illuminated lettering, white LED, and then have the Asian Kitchen as a cabinet with white lettering and a black opaque background. Although it does mention having an east elevation and north elevation, we are primarily here for approval for the east elevation only. The north is just an optional that we might consider in the future because of the two-sided.
Okay,
That's really about it.
well, thank you. If you want to stay there, please, while we, Sonia?
Usually wall signs can be approved by staff, but when they accompany a zoning permit, they're required to be approved by Plan Commission, so that's why this item is here tonight. Approval is recommended with finding of fact that 2 wall signs can be permitted because it fronts on 2 streets. Also, the previous tenant also utilized 2 signs, and conditions of approval, if the sign is removed in the future and causes any damage to the ephes, that be repaired. And with white signs in the past, we've required some sort of diffuser for glare.
Yeah, I'd definitely talk to your vendor for the sign to make sure, especially with LED, you don't want that thing to be blinding, the white.
Okay.
It may be a shade of white that won't be as,
Okay.
I know that we've had some concerns even at the Fireman's Park. The LED lights on the side of the building are extremely bright. But anyway, other commission members' comments? Mr.
I think it looks good. It's nicely scaled to the building, and I don't have any problems with it. Is the cabinet behind the ephes already, or is the cabinet going to be? Is there going to be a, what are those called, runners or
Raceway.
raceway? Yeah. Is the raceway? There's not a raceway there, is there?
Not too sure, but it'd be really similar to the SWAT Indian restaurant style.
It says they're going to be mounted flat to the building facade.
Yeah.
Okay, so all the electrical's behind it. That's great.
There is electrical.
Yeah, it's behind it already before too. So.
Cool. Looks nice.
Other comment, Mr. Humber?
I agree. I think it looks really good with the scale of your building and everything. I just want to reiterate one more time what the chair said. You're right at a stoplight intersection, so if that white gets to be too bright, it's a real problem for drivers and everything in that area. So it's real important. I think when you do it now, they can have the opacity of that sign, so it's maybe not like a glaring spotlight. It'll light up, give you plenty of identification, but not be like a beacon in people's face. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yep.
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
definitely have that down.
Further discussion? Is there a motion?
Move approval based on staff's finding of fact.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
And subject to the conditions.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And conditions.
6E, public hearing on request by Ken's Meats and Deli for approval of a zoning permit facade improvement program grant for facade improvements to the Ken's Meat and Deli Building at 5725 Monona Drive. Good evening.
I'm looking for consideration for Ken's Meats for a facade improvement. I think everyone's got. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. Anything else about any?
Just removal of the old and to highlight Mr. Ganser's sign.
What?
No, I'm not accusing myself.
What is the?
It's going to be a stucco base.
What about the pylon sign?
That's going to remain. Yep.
Any changes to that?
None. Or either to the roof sign. That's there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. If you want to stay there, we'll close the public hearing. We'll move on to F, consideration of action on the request. Sonia?
So this is a request for, one, a zoning permit for alterations to the building, and two, for approval of a facade improvement program grant and whether the proposed improvements are eligible projects. So the process would be, one, for the Plan Commission to determine if those project components are eligible and consistent with the Monona Drive Urban Design Guidelines. And if so, then the Plan Commission can approve the zoning permit, and then the request would go to the Finance and Personnel Committee. The applicants requested the full $10,000 with a match over that, so they're exceeding $20,000 in order to get the maximum $10,000 grant. And then there would be paperwork, and the project would need to be completed before reimbursement could be made. The Monona Drive Urban Design Guidelines and eligible project costs are listed in the application, and examples of the previous projects that have been funded were also included, with photos of the Salad Creations Ultimate Salon and the Lush Now Tempted Salon projects.
Commission members? Robert?
I don't think all the items here are eligible, but there's certainly more than enough to get well above 20,000 for the 10,000 match. I mean, the one I'd pick out is a roof. We probably don't give matching money to put a new roof on a building, but between the facade and everything else, it's a facade upgrade, which is what we look for.
Mm-hmm.
I think it meets it. As far as the architecture, I think it's fine as far as the zoning permit goes.
Thank you. Mr. Ganser?
I got a question, Joe. You know that 32 inches of height on the facade, or the height of the band, if you will, or the strip, is that greater than what's on there?
4 inches greater. What we're doing is we're lifting it up just a little bit so we have more runoff, so we don't have the situation we have now as the water's coming.
Even on the bottom, it goes 4 inches.
Right, 4 inches higher on the top.
It's just an aesthetic thought. I was hoping that would be the case, because it could be bigger than what's existing right now.
Yeah.
It's a little
Yep.
spindly.
It's 28 now, and we thought we'd bump it up a little bit just to keep the water from coming through the front of it.
Okay.
Further discussion? Is there a motion?
It's an action item.
Consideration of action, right? It's an action item.
We got to close out E.
No, I did close out E.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Move approval of the zoning permit and facade improvement program grant for the facade improvements to Ken's Meats and Deli as proposed. With the following findings of fact, and with the findings of fact and conditions of approval stated by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? None? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving on to 6G, public hearing and request by Gordon Flush Company for approval of a zoning permit for building and site improvements entry facade and parking lot expansion at 2501 and 2551 Kilgus Road, represented by architect Mark Singh. Good evening.
Hi, thank you. I didn't realize it was so fancy here with the monitors, so I came with old school
Hey,
boards.
works for us. We're old school. I'm old school.
This is the project over by Southtown on Kilgus Road. The existing building, it's a distribution center.
It's all right, I got it. I'm good.
And they have existing parking, existing curb cuts, and what the owner would like to do, it's going to be a call center, so they want a little more presence on the front of the building. We're building a new entry, adding a new parking lot with 18 stalls, actually 22 stalls, and a new curb cut onto Kilgus. It's a metal building. I'm hoping this project will win me an AIA award this year, though.
Yeah.
We're using really the same material that's on the building, same dark masonry. And this is their corporate blue color. There's an existing blue band that goes around the building. We'll do a new canopy. And it provides a kind of a sign base for a new sign. Gives a little more presence to the entryway, especially with the parking, people parking over here and just driving out the, be able to see the new entry.
Okay, why don't we, Mark, if you want to just stay there, we'll close out the public hearing. We'll move on to the pre-hearing conference. So this isn't up for action tonight. Pre-hearing conference on the request. Sonia?
So this is here for zoning permit review of the site plan alterations and the building elevation alterations. And some additional information is requested, listed in the staff report, including an illumination plan and light fixtures if you'll be using any in the parking lot. The landscaping schedule, so just additional information on what the plantings are and the quantities. You provided some additional detail on the building material, and we'll do a review with the city's consulting engineer as more than 3,000 square feet of land is disturbed, which triggers the stormwater and erosion control permits.
I had a question on C1. It says existing parking lot to be removed. Is there a parking lot there now, and is the curb cut there, or is that all just grass area?
Yeah, the curb cut is not there, but there is an existing asphalt paving there that they've parked on the adjacent property.
So the access to the north from the exists into the main parking lot?
Correct, yes.
And then you want to add the curb cut over here?
Yeah, we're going to provide new curb and gutter and new asphalt throughout.
Okay, thank you. Commission members, comments for the applicant? Yes, Mr. Humbert.
Two comments, and I think you were involved in this project from the beginning, weren't you?
Mhm.
Do you remember that drainage requirement on this thing where everything had to stay on the site? We had to hump up the driveways coming in to make sure it got down to that little restricted outflow
I'm
down.
surprised you remember all that.
Life.
We just- So we just gotta stay true to that, make sure when we rebuild a lot or whatever that we have that. And that all goes back to the city's detention back there, if you remember.
Right, yes.
You remember all that?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a big to-do. And I think somebody, if you're rebuilding the existing lot too, did you say?
Just repaving it, yeah.
Okay, so
it should
the
have
the pavers are gonna come in, and they're gonna tell you, well, we'll get rid of this hump. Well, that hump needs to be in there for the drainage requirements on there. Now, when the 10 stall lot that there now was built, I see that thing just drains off into that little ditch and out a curb cut and goes out.
Correct.
So I don't know if there's requirements for that lot, if they're different than the other lot that Gordon Flesh has or not. It's just something to keep in mind.
It's totally flat. The lot is totally flat there.
It is, but this little parking lot actually drains off. There's a little ditch with a culvert for this drainage. It comes along the north side of the building. It goes to the east and it comes out right here. this lot, if you look at it, kind of just seeps off right into there. I'm not sure if that was the intent of the original agreement. So, and I don't know, you're replacing a 10 stall lot with, what, 20 stall lot? So it's not a big area. I would suggest you just kind of look at it, and if you can get it off into the grass and do a few things with it before it goes out there, that'd be great.
Okay.
You are going to curb and gutter the new lot also?
Yes.
Good. And then my other comment would be the landscaping. I thought I saw a comment here somewhere said a tree or two. Well, if you remember when this thing was done, it's got so much impervious, there's almost nowhere to landscape. So when we landscape, we said, well, we'll put some extra landscaping over here, and that's stuff we're taking out. So when we do it, instead of just looking at it, it's a 20 stall lot, we really need to look at the overall parking lot, the overall project, and make sure we've got the landscaping appropriate for the overall project, not just the lot addition. And I'm sure that's something you would have looked at, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it tonight.
No, I'll bring that back for the final review.
Yeah, and then just when you're looking at it, we're looking at the overall site, not just that little piece, because I believe we allowed some landscaping to spill over, because there just wasn't a lot of room on this lot to do much before. It was pretty full.
I think the owner is looking for more landscape anyway,
And
it needs landscape.
It needs some. Actually, this ash tree is going to be taken out. This one here is about dead if you look at it. Maybe it's got the borer already, but I mean, it's about dead.
Yeah.
And there's a pine there that looks, I mean, you're right, you need somebody to look at it and fix it up a little bit. But I'm thrilled that they want to stay here and add on and get more people in Monona, so congrats, that's awesome.
Okay.
Thank you. Rob?
Is the addition of a ground sign part of the plan as well?
We're going to remove one ground sign, and if we get the curb cut, we'd like to move the ground sign over to that new curb cut. So people will enter the site in the front of the building there, rather than, back by the docks as it currently enters.
Okay. Would that have to be submitted as separate?
It can be submitted with your next submittal or as a separate, but plan commission approval is required.
Right.
That's my only comment.
One question? Nothing? Answer?
Nope, looks good.
Sure.
It looks good. I was going to submit it for an AIA award for sure, Mark. Just be sure to note your stall sizes when you bring it back so we know what that is. And then the only other question I had, who is the user across the street from where the new curb cut would be? Is there any implications back and forth with that, with semis coming and going or anything?
There's no curb cut on the other side there.
Right across the street? Yeah, it shows one on the plan here, so I didn't know who that was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's Monona Spring, isn't it? What is that? That's not Monona Spring.
Just something to consider if there's semis
Oh, that's Decker's buildings.
or... it's
That's all the
Deckers.
buildings Ross Menard built, and it goes all the way through there. I think Decker's own those now. They're multi-tenant buildings.
Yeah, he doesn't get big deliveries or anything in there, really, right? So it's really just car traffic, small truck.
It's the back, that's the back driveway where all their docks are, so that'd be, there's a lot of straight frame trucks and such, but when I say that, I don't think there's a lot of traffic. I've been down there a lot, I just don't see a lot of traffic on that road.
It's fine with me, just bring it up if there's some
Yeah.
issues.
Okay.
Griff?
I think it's fine.
So for the change in use, because this is going to a call center, is there, as far as number of parks that are required, how many would be?
It's actually a office warehouse right now with a call center inside of it. They're just identifying it on the outside that it is a call center, so when customers come up, they know. It's more of a description of the bigger part of their business now, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Anything?
There's no change.
No.
No change.
Robert?
Oh, I think that's a fine distinction. I think we should talk about it so it isn't approved use. When it was put in, it wasn't zoned as a call center, it was zoned as an office and warehouse. Now, it might be a call center now, it might have morphed into that, but it wasn't, so I think we probably need to recognize the fact that we're allowing a call center in there. You have plenty of stuff. I don't see an issue with it at all.
No.
Do we have a separate zoning for a call center? It's really an office use.
It is. It's probably something staff could allow as a change, but I mean, we need to call it what it is when we approve it now, right? I don't think there's any issue, just like that ground sign. I don't think there's any issue moving along, because you own that lot to the north also. I mean, Gordon Flesh owns that, so if they want to have their one ground sign up there versus other lot, I don't think the commission has any issues with this, just needs to be approved.
Okay.
Would you agree? And lot configuration, you've got a funky angle in there, and I love angles, and I wouldn't like it if it was on Monona Drive, but here, again, that road is such low traffic, I just don't see it as an issue.
Anything else for the applicant? Mark, thank you. Thank you. Move to
Yep.
I, review draft of updated implementation element of the comprehensive plan.
Apologies,
Oops.
was not able to get to that.
All right, so we'll move on to 7. Well, while we're talking about it, what is the battle plan for that going forward?
I will have the implementation element ready for the next meeting. The only other item left is to finalize the future land use map, and we have a little subcommittee of Jim and Chris that got together and we talked about it a couple months ago now, and I've just been needing to get the 3 of us back together to confirm that the map looks good before we bring it back for everyone to look at. And that would be all of the step-by-step review completed by the Plan Commission. And then we would get the whole draft to you with some more time to look at it and go through everything as one big picture. And then what's required in the statute is a 30-day comment period after the Plan Commission reviews the complete draft. And then it'll go to City Council for review and approval.
And what's the deadline for the plan?
There's no real deadline. It's 10 years after approval.
Got it. Okay, move to 7, reports of,
Chris had a question.
sorry, Chris, thanks.
That's all right, that's when we get the whole draft review as one. I mean, I like to read the whole thing as one document, so can we have more than just 3 days before our plan commission meeting, like have it for 2 weeks or a month or whatever? I mean, it'd be nice when you read it to read a document for me from start to finish, and sometimes things jump out at you when they don't, when you look at the individual sections. Thanks.
Yep, I'll do that.
7A, 1, staff report regarding status of development project proposals. A1 is review of conditions of approval spreadsheet. Sonia.
So this is an update on our spreadsheet that keeps track of everything that gets approved. It's broken up into some categories, so none of the items that are outstanding right now are required to come back to Plan Commission, such as the landscaping plan or anything. We don't have any items like that that are outstanding. And I called out a couple in the next section that were kind of priorities. I wanted to make sure that the McDonald's pylon sign requirement was being followed up on. So I sent some reminder letters this summer that didn't work, and I talked to the city attorney about enforcement options so that we could move ahead with that. But then I got a call from the sign company today that said they're working on it, so that's good news. So that should be in the works soon. And the second item there is traced on the water. There were a lot of items that they had to get through with all their different zoning reviews that came before the commission. There were over 20 conditions of approval and 7 items in the development agreement that they needed to provide. And now all of those have been completed, except for during construction, the slope along the lagoon was not constructed properly. The slope was too steep and it violated their DNR permit. So they had to go in and rebuild it, and in doing so, they put more fill in the floodplain than they're allowed to. They're actually not allowed to put any fill in the floodplain there because it's a flood storage district, and they needed to provide storage for any fill that they put in it. But that fill still remains, and I think it's over 50 cubic yards of fill still. That needs to be removed. So we've been working with the DNR and reviewing that plan, and also getting restoration plans from the applicant, and that's the final thing that we're waiting for. We do have a plan received on Friday to fix it, hopefully for the last time. And then final occupancy can be granted on the Tresta site. They also had some other stormwater facility issues that were rebuilt and a few other things along the way. So that's Tresta. On the spreadsheet, there are, let's see, the next 2 things, the salons, number 4. back in 2012, the zoning permit was approved to expand some salon uses, and there were parking lot changes that were required, and those never were completed. So Bruce Soft just recently updated me that it's supposed to be done at the end of September. Legacy Martial Arts, when they received their zoning permit, landscaping additions were required, and I just heard back from the building owner on the 9th, and he's still planning to do that this fall and was held up with some insurance claims. 6 and 7 were recent, so no real issues there, just waiting for those things to be completed. The 3 items in purple are longer term that we're just monitoring over time. So Four Lakes Yacht Club would get automatic approval in September of every year if there were no complaints, and so far I haven't received any complaints since that was approved in 2014. Global Presence Ministries has the limited lease in the old EDS building, so we'll continue to monitor that to bring back more landscaping if they stay. And Starry and Financial sign on Broadway will be removed in 2018. And then 2 items in green need landscaping.
Thank you. We have next meeting September 28th and October 12th. Anything else, Sonia?
For the 28th, I'll have the implementation element, the planning department operating budget, and possibly revised plans from Gordon Flesch. And we have a new construction proposal, 1000 East Broadway, behind where the Tower Inn Richard Fritz multi-tenant building is, and behind or next to the pumping station 18. So this is a 7,000 square foot Meineke car care center.
Is that where Badger concrete placement used to be?
No, this is the vacant lot 4 out of the 4 Fritz properties. So the first one was the multi-tenant building.
You're talking on the other side.
2 is UW Health Clinic.
It's behind the lift station, the Madison Met lift station.
Tower ends in the strip center. Any requests for information? Robert?
You know that. Since we're talking about signs tonight, the first one would be that trace the sign. Didn't we approve that down in the middle of the parking lot? And now it's right where you sit by that road, and I mean it is that far off the edge of the sidewalk.
And that was another issue that wasn't built to plan.
But it's
on the
not where we
trace to
approved it,
site.
and that one is a visual hazard. If somebody's coming down that sidewalk, you're going to hit them with a car. You cannot see it until you pull into the crosswalk.
So I noticed when it went into that it wasn't correct, and so I had our engineer review the vision triangle based on the formula that's in our code, and he ran the calculations for both sides and told me that it was okay.
It's okay for vehicular traffic. It's not okay for the pedestrians. And we would never have approved that close to the sidewalk. You have to get your car and pull into that crosswalk. If somebody's coming on rollerblades or a bike or something down that sidewalk, it's an accident waiting to happen. You will hit them. And I remember when they came here, they were originally going to put it there. I was going to talk to them about that vision and getting it back, and they had moved it to the middle. And I said, oh, that's great. That's a better place for it. And then we kind of left it. So somehow they moved it back here then after we approved it?
They moved it there, yes.
On their own?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a bad spot. I think I would suggest everybody drive down there and see how you'd feel if somebody any faster than a pedestrian's coming down that sidewalk. It's bad.
It is bad. That's one of the problems with the vision triangle calculations is that they're always based on the curb. True. Right? And
Based
so
on-
sidewalks vary,
Right.
distances from the curb, where the sidewalk is not considered when you're calculating vision triangle at all.
We look at it, but they moved it, so we didn't have to look at it.
Quite honestly, I didn't even remember that it was supposed to be in the middle.
It was, and there's a lot of traffic coming out of that lot at that intersection. I mean, it's an accident waiting to happen, I think. So
For whatever it's worth, the setback, and I didn't disagree with your comments about looking west for the park sign, but the park sign setback is the same as the waypoint setback.
yeah, but the sidewalk comes way up.
Oh, yeah.
It's not anywhere near
Yeah.
the sidewalk. It doesn't obstruct your view of the
No,
sidewalk.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you need to sit there, exit Lottis Park or the Waypoint, and look at this thing. It's not good. I don't believe the commission would have approved. I mean, I would have said something about it if they wanted to put it right there, that close to the sidewalk.
It's only we didn't approve it.
We didn't. I don't believe we did we, Sonia? We didn't approve it there like that. That's a problem. It's a really nice sign, but it's put, and it's a long enough island. It could be pulled back, but they don't make it tougher for their people to see a little bit, but it wouldn't be a hazard in the public right of way, which I believe it is right now. So my first comment. My second comment, since we're having a sign night.
You don't like sign night, though.
I hate sign night. If I'd have known there was this many people, I already told I would have not come because there's plenty of people.
You did get to have a stormwater comment, though.
I did. I got one. Verizon in Building B at Pier 37. That entire glass on that, what would it be, the west side, is an entire advertisement.
I
The whole
noticed that
thing.
the other day.
That's not allowed. And the entire thing is a big poster for Verizon.
I'll send him a letter.
That's not right.
Isn't it? How is that described? I mean, I noticed
You can
that.
have up to 50% of the windows with little things in them.
Yeah.
According to our sign code, that's 100%.
Yeah.
And it really, to be honest, I think it makes that building look tacky. That's just my personal opinion. But
That's a good point.
staying on our sign thing, my third comment would be, we need to just have a meeting sometime with a light agenda and talk about these sign colors. We agonize over this every single applicant that comes in and wants their branded color. And I understand people wanting their brand. We should sit as a commission and decide, are we going to have a building be monotone, or do we like the variety of different signs and have some consistency maybe in height and placement, but maybe let people have a little leeway on having corporate colors. I think that's a serious discussion we need to have. And I disagree a little bit with Mary Beth. We asked for consistency, and the developer came in and the developer chose red and white. You could make a lot of color signs back there, and it's not just because of that. As a commission, at that time, we said we want consistency. That was the big thing. If we like variety, if it adds character, we should talk about it. And let's say, yeah, let's add character if that's the case.
Sonia and I will look at the agendas coming up. And
I'm not trying to load it up, but sometime when we have time, it should be a discussion under an open item. And lastly, Monona Drive, last year and the year before, we had water bags on all our trees. We didn't this year, and some of those trees are looking really bad, some look really good. And here's my concern as Plan Commission. We did what we could to really make Monona Drive something special. And one of the greatest things we did was the intensity of landscaping. I have this great fear as these things die off, which they're going to do because they weren't taken care of this year as well as past years, that we're just going to take them out and say we got enough trees. And that's not what Monona Drive is. We need to have some kind of a replacement program in place, some way to monitor these trees, maybe nurse some of them back, and the ones that we can't, replace them, because the intensity of landscaping, and especially in phase 1. We fell off on phase 2 and 3. All of a sudden, the committee wasn't as involved, and they were making all the decisions in the field. If you look at some of the decisions made, it looks very average in some stretches. But the intensity of the landscaping, they're planted closer than they normally be, but it makes a difference on Monona Drive. It changes the look and feel of it. People don't know exactly why, but it feels different, and that's one of the big reasons it does. So my comments leading to the fact that we have some program in place that we don't do like all these people do when we ask them to have trees and they die, they cut them out and go away, that we have some replacement program for them.
We do have a replacement program for trees.
There's a budget for that.
Yes.
I've worked with the streets department about replacing trees in different areas throughout the community, so I don't know how that wouldn't.
Okay.
I mean, actually, even on Monona Drive as well.
It should. I just saying it so it doesn't get forgotten, because I know what happens. It's like, oh, they're so close here, we don't need that many trees. That's more leaves to vacuum. But
Some are going to have to be thinned out at some point. Some of those are planted fairly close to streetlights, and they're going to, they're elms that are going to get, and they're doing so well, especially some
Some
the
of them
elms,
are, yes.
and are doing so terrific that in not too many years they're going to have to be limbed heavily, or
some will. And some already should be starting to be limbed up a little bit. Because some of them have some great growth, but they still don't look like they've really been pruned up to a pedestrian level yet. But that's all stuff we can work on. I'm just a little worried after that. We had they didn't call it an official drought, but it was a pretty dry stretch of summer, and I think those trees really suffered through that.
Okay.
I second that concern.
Any more on your list, Mr. Humberg?
Not that I can remember. My list is in my truck, so I put the ones down I could remember. I had a pretty good list.
We have time to go out and get it?
Yeah, you want
Or is there-
Can I go get them quick?
Yeah, you go ahead. We'll log out this door while you go get it.
Move adjourned. All those in favor?
Aye.
Are we done?
Everybody?